10 times the Pawn Stars encounter thieves. Pawn Stars are very famous at their business. They have encountered with all sorts of people, and thieves are no exception. In today's video, we are going to look at 10 times that thieves tried selling items to the guys at the world-famous gold and silver pawn shop with varying success. But before we begin, we hope to see you stay until the end, as you won't want to miss what we have to show in today's video. Also, be sure to subscribe to our channel, click that notification bell to be notified of any future videos, and comment Pawn Stars to be entered into our $100 Amazon gift card giveaway. Number 10. Rick and stolen Tyrian shekel. Despite making great efforts to abide by state and local laws, the gold and silver pawn shop staff has, unknown to them, occasionally taken in stolen property like every other pawn shop. In Season 7's episode called Shackle and Hide, Rick bought a 2,000-year-old Tyrian shekel, a coin most historians believe was the mode of currency, using the infamous transaction of the 30 pieces of Judas paid to Judas and to betray Christ. Despite later came to the shop and informed them that the coin had been stolen, not by the seller who was featured in the episode, but by a previous owner of the coin. Nevertheless, the Harrisons were allowed to keep it, as the original owner had been compensated by his insurance policy. But while they got lucky there, it turned out that Rick had paid way too much for the coin. Despite its rarity, a well-preserved shekel of Tyre would usually only be worth around $1,200, and because it had been cleaned, this one had lost a lot of value. So most of the $1,600 that Rick had paid for the coin are probably lost forever. Number 9. Old man faked with diamonds, in this case, cubic zirconia. Some of the biggest scams that the older of the two pawnshop owners had suffered occurred back in the late 1970s and early 80s when the so-called cubic zirconias were seized. These first appeared in the markets. These clean-cut synthetic diamonds fooled innumerable pawn shops all across America, as they would appear to be 100% real. Whenever tested at that time, the old pawn shop suffered the loss of around $30,000 due to the fake diamonds. But he has learned his lesson. Nobody knew about them, and they tested his diamonds everywhere. Corey eventually did a DIY video about CZs and how to detect the fake diamonds. In what he said, that the zirconia is usually appear to be too perfect, as there are very few perfect diamonds out there. If you can find even the slightest hint of a scratch, they're most probably fake. Number 8. Stolen gold coins. Pawn shops are highly regulated under Nevada law, which means that every customer that walks into the gold and silver pawn shop must present identification, and every item pawned must be entered into a database that police check regularly. Just like any other pawn shop, the Harrison's shop must hold pawned items for 30 to 90 days before disposing of them, giving owners time to redeem them and police time to identify stolen goods. However, the law makes a few exceptions to this holding requirements, and one of it is for coins which are not part of jewelry and which a pawn shop can dispose of anytime. Once, this exception caused the Harrisons some trouble back in 2014 when the police got involved after they had melted down some gold coins that later turned out to be stolen. It all started when a woman came to the pawn shop with a collection of pretty valuable gold coins and ended up with what she thought was a pretty good deal that saw her getting a little over $12,000 for them. However, the Harrisons later learned that she had stolen the gold coins from her uncle. But it came even worse for the poor man. Not only had his niece robbed him for his coins, but he also had no chance of getting them back since the pawn shop had decided to melt the coins down in order to make more money from selling the gold than they had initially spent on the coins. And if he thinks that this must have been the sad news for the uncle, then listen to this. The gold collection was actually worth about $50,000 as it contained rare coins like a 1903 Saga, dense $20 gold piece Silver Morgan coins from the 1880s, and contemporary 1-ounce American gold buffalo gold pieces. So not only did Nevada native David Walters get robbed and will never see his coin collection again, but his niece didn't even get a good deal, as she only got about a quarter of its worth before she was caught and served a sentence for theft. Number 7. Corey and fake Rolex. The business instinct definitely runs in the family, but some things you have to learn the hard way, or at least Corey did. He basically grew up in the pawn shop, as he was only 9 years old when he began working and polishing knobs. When he started working the night shift all by himself 9 years later, he picked some things up from his dad. But he wasn't really that experienced and simply didn't know what to expect. Apparently, the word about a novice working at the shop got out, and Corey ended up buying not one, but 6 fake Rolex watches in just 1 week. Even though this scam and his rookie mistake cost him $4,000, there's no doubt that he's learned his lesson. Number 6. Chumlee's comic book collection. Chumlee is known for a lot of things around gold and silver pawn shop. Usually, though, it's his ability to get himself in, and somewhat out of, bad situations that's universally recognized. And that's putting it kindly. As expected, it's in the season 15 episode Chum's Risky Business, where our pawn star comes into a sizable collection of comic books. While some issues of comics have been known to sell for astronomical amounts, like the $1 million copy of Action Comics 1, which saw Superman for the first time, others don't typically hold their value. So rather than calling down an expert or taking Antoine's advice, Chum figured this was a time where the books would have strengthened numbers, and decided to hand our seller a cool $500 for the 7-box collection. Towards the end of the episode, we see the shop's comic book expert, Paul, give the guys the bad news. Out of the pile, about 10 to 15 books amounted to under $200, while the 2,100 other comics could fetch about 5 cents per if they were lucky. Not an astronomical loss, but the man-hours alone to get rid of the pile of recyclable paper doesn't look good for Chumlee. Number 5. Rick and stolen diamond earrings. As you know, the pawn shop has to enter every item they've offered into a database that is regularly reviewed by police, and whenever something turns out to be stolen, the police will come and get the item from the pawn shop and return it to its rightful owner. This is also what happened when a man dressed in a fancy suit came to the gold and silver pawn shop and offered Rick a pair of diamond earrings of the finest quality one day. And now, Suit comes in the pawn shop, got a big set of diamond earrings, asked him all the questions, even had a receipt. The pawn shop owner naturally made further inquiries about how the seller obtained the earrings, but because the man had all the right answers and could even produce a receipt, they came to an agreement, and Rick paid the not-so-small sum of $40,000 for the jewelry. However, only 3 days later, the police came to the pawn shop and informed him that the earrings had unfortunately been stolen. The gold and silver pawn shop obviously gave them back to the owner, and the thief was quickly arrested, but the Harrisons' money was lost. And according to Rick, this is the biggest bust he had ever had in the pawn shop to this very day. Number 4. Rick with fancy piece. Ironically, the season 5 episode titled Corey's Big Play also involved a little foul play at the hands of Rick Harrison after buying a 19th century Wells Fargo strongbox with 2 ball and chain sets. What should have come off as a major red flag, and somewhat did, was how Rick called out the Yuma and Folsom ball and chain sets as inauthentic, maybe putting a little too much trust in his customers. Harrison decidedly dropped $450 on the box. It's later in the episode when we receive a visit from the Beard of Knowledge himself, aka Mark Hall Patton, which we're told within just a few seconds of looking at this so-called strongbox that he dubs it a complete fantasy piece. Number 3. Rick and the $13,000 signature. In the season 6 episode, Say It Ain't So, Rick made another ill-fated gamble without consulting his expert buddies when a seller came into the shop carrying a book that had supposedly been signed by baseball legend Shoeless Joe Jackson. Since Joe Jackson's signature, one of the rarest, wants to find throughout the appraisal, it seems that Rick followed his heart rather than in his mind, as he couldn't have been more excited because Jackson was illiterate. One amongst the most forged sports signatures in the world, disregarded his own reservations as well as questionable certificate of authenticity. Rick eventually shelled out $13,000. It was only after spending all that money that he decided to pay his book expert, Rebecca, a visit. Rebecca informed him that the signature was most likely a fake, so Rick went for a second opinion from an authenticator who backed Rebecca's claim, saying that the signature is not only a fake, but also a ridiculously bad one. Number 2. Rick and Helmet Head. In the season 2 episode titled Helmet Head, one man surprised Rick Harrison with a unique automobile, a 1964 Austin Healey Sprite. Originally built for the British demographic, this Mark II version of the Sprite pairs a lightweight body with a tiny yet peppy sports engine, making it a cool yet classy collectible that could fit in anyone's bike shed. Despite not being able to start the engine, Harrison saw it as an easy fix, matched with potential, and after some haggling managed to come to a $5,000 agreement with the seller. Unfortunately, after getting the Austin Healey inspected for what Rick thought would be a simple $400 job, Rick's car expert Wally piled down even more bad news. Any work that needed to be done on the car would have set Rick back an additional $6,000, essentially making the pile of rust worthless in nature and setting Harrison back a few grand. Yikes. Number 1. Stolen submarine. Starting with, in this picture we have a case when a thief actually managed to sell a stolen item to Pawn Stars. With the help of a clueless middleman, or in this case, middlewoman, in the show's episode titled Sub for Sale. From the 4th season, a woman named Lynette brought an unidentified personal model of a submarine to the gold and silver pawn shop. Lynette said that she had obtained this up from an unnamed person who had it sitting in their yard and had asked her to take it away straight away. Rick commented that it's hard to imagine that someone would just give her a submarine because the new one cost over $100,000. As they started haggling, Lynette asked for $25,000. So Rick asked her if she realizes that they're in the middle of the desert. What she replied, "Yeah, but there's lakes and stuff." Ultimately, Rick got the submarine for only $3,000, pointing out that it was obviously in rough condition and would need a great deal of maintenance. That would have ended the story, but unfortunately for Rick, it turned out later that the submarine was stolen 5 years earlier, and the lawyer for the submarine's original owner saw the episode when it aired on TV. Eventually, Rick had to part ways with the sub as it was returned to its wealthy owner, who reportedly resided in Rancho Mirage in California. A retired truck driver, whose sister worked for the submarine's owner, was hired to head out to Vegas, retrieve the stolen sub, and haul it back to California. Speaking to Victoriaville Daily Press, the man revealed that such thefts are not really uncommon in California, saying this wasn't the first time he's moved something like this. In the end, Las Vegas police gave a statement in which they said that Lynette appeared to be unaware of the fact that the submarine had been stolen, and that it was unclear if there were any leads in the case. And with that said, that concludes what are 10 times the Pawn Stars were encountered with thieves. Feel free to comment down below what you thought about today's video, and maybe leave a like if you've enjoyed. Also, don't forget to subscribe and push that notification bell to see more film-focused videos similar to this one in the near future. And have yourself an excellent day.